Welcome to the World Nuclear Association Strategic eForum 2020, Maximising Nuclear Energy's Socio-Economic and Environmental Benefits. The panel will begin in just a few short moments. We would like to thank our sponsors, Centrus, Kazatomprom, KHNP, Nuclear 21, Rosatom, and Urenco. And now we will join our moderator, Tim Gitzel.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Hello, everyone. Whether it's morning, noon, or evening, where you are, I wish you a very, very warm welcome to the third and final chapter of the World Nuclear Association Strategic eForum 2020. I have to tell you, if I had the choice, I would much rather be at the Park Plaza Hotel in London, England with all of you right now, getting ready for the big banquet that we normally have this evening, but unfortunately we won't be doing that. So I applaud Agneta and the World Nuclear Association for coming up with this virtual alternative. So far it's been a big success. I thought the session on Wednesday, chaired by Agneta, and then the session on Thursday, chaired by George Borvis, went over very, very well. Today we have an outstanding panel ready to speak to a very important topic, which is this: maximizing nuclear energy's socioeconomic and environmental benefits. We want to discuss today how we can generate jobs and make our energy cleaner, and we're going to do that today. So let me start by introducing our distinguished panel of speakers, and I will ask each of them to provide us with some introductory comments after I've introduced them all. The panelists in alphabetical order are Professor Bumjin Chung. Professor Chung teaches at the prestigious Kyunghee University in Seoul, South Korea. He's well known in nuclear engineering circles and has taught at universities in numerous countries around the world. Mr. Liu Shanzhen. Mr. Liu is the Deputy Director General, CNNC International. CNNC, of course, being a world leader in the construction of nuclear reactors. Ms. Pauline Lyon. Ms. Lyon is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Rosatom in Russia. Ms. Lyon has over 15 years of professional experience in strategy and international management and has worked on many large development and infrastructure projects around the world. Mr. Johannes Fennington, in addition to being a big fan of ice hockey, Mr. Fennington is the country chair for Uniper in Sweden. Gotten to know Johan as a fellow member of the board of the World Nuclear Association, and I can tell you he is first class, and we look forward to hearing from him today. And finally, Jay Weileman. Jay is the president and CEO of GE Hitachi Nuclear, based in the United States. GE Hitachi, as we all know, is a world-leading provider of advanced reactors and nuclear services with operations around the globe. So welcome to all of our panelists today. Thank you for agreeing to join us. I'm going to start by asking each panelist to provide us with some opening thoughts on our topic today. Our topic, which is again, maximizing nuclear energy's socioeconomic and environmental benefits. So let's start with Professor Chung. Professor, let me turn the floor over to you, please.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Professor Bumjin Chung from Kyunghee University, South Korea. It is my great honor to participate in this conference as a panelist. I would like to take this chance to share my thoughts with the distinguished participants of this conference. Everybody knows nuclear power is cheap and environmentally friendly, as it does not produce greenhouse gases. However, this is not very well known to the public. What is worse, people tend to be afraid of nuclear power. I think this is due to the widespread of fake news. Although in its essence, nuclear power is unrelated to politics, the public fear of nuclear power is easily exploited by populist politicians as a means of improving their approval rate. This is a case of South Korea and may be the case for your country. This is also the main hindrance of expanding nuclear power, the negative perception of the public regarding nuclear power. There is no other measure to expand and maximize the benefits of nuclear energy than to deploy more nuclear power plants worldwide. Yet, before that, we must mitigate such negative public perception. We have tried reaching out to the public, but we failed. Our communication should have been more effective. We should have answered the questions the public raised instead of repeating the cliche on economics, safety, and greenhouse gas benefits of nuclear power. We should have studied the fake news and debunked it. If we succeed, more nuclear power plants will be deployed, and nuclear power will further benefit the world in terms of economy, resource preservation, and greenhouse gas reduction, together with the stable supply of electricity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chung, for those comments, and I couldn't agree more on the need for better communication. We've been doing this for many decades, and we still struggle, I think, to get our message for nuclear out to the world. So thank you very much for those comments. Next, let me ask Mr. Liu from CNNC International to provide his opening thoughts.
Thank you, Tim. And distinguished friends, hello from China. And it's evening now, and I would like to say good evening to my friends. And firstly, I would like to say a good news. Tell you a good news that this week another nuclear units is connected, not connected, is commercially operation. So it's a good news for China and also for the world nuclear industry. And up to now in China, there are totally 48 units in operation and another 14 units under construction. So in China, the policy of developing nuclear energy is still keep the same way as before, and also in the future. And I guess maybe in another several weeks later, we will have another 4 units be put into construction. So we believe the nuclear is better, is a contributor for a better world. So by building more nuclear units, we can supply the energy, we can create more jobs. And so I guess we believe the role of nuclear energy for the socio-economic and also environment. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu. We are all cheering for you in China as you build out your nuclear program. We've watched with great admiration the progress you've made over the past 10 years or so, and we are certainly encouraged about the future of nuclear in China. So thank you, sir, for that. It's a pleasure today to have Ms. Paulina Lyon with us from Rosatom. Paulina, can I please turn things over to you?
Yes, thank you, Tim. And I'd like to welcome all our online participants and hope these 3 days of the WNA were really insightful. At least for me, they are. And Rosatom, you know, it's a Russian-based, but it's truly global company as we develop our projects in 50 countries all over the world. And in the last 10 years, we have observed a significant growth of our foreign orders portfolio, and specifically for nuclear power new builds. We have experience in negotiating NPP projects with very different countries. For example, in Bangladesh, Hungary, or Egypt, level of economic development, types of energy systems, and seismic conditions differ drastically. And so we used to adapt our proposal of the nuclear power plant to account for a given country's needs. However, despite all these differences in context, what is similar in all these cases is that our customers are interested not in only establishing a safe and secure source of electricity with reasonable costs. They all anticipate some non-financial benefits, such as new jobs, a boost for higher education, and local infrastructure development. Therefore, we understand that our value propositions should be a combination of all these commercial, technological, and socioeconomic parameters. And of course, we should not omit the ecological and climate requirements. And the climate agenda becomes an issue of the highest priority nowadays. We definitely support the climate agreement and do believe that nuclear energy contributes a lot to solve the carbon neutrality challenge. It is almost the same carbon footprint from nuclear as wind power does. But currently in Europe, of course, you know that we observe a galloping increase in demand for renewables. There are a very contradictory attitude toward nuclear power. This happens despite the fact that, for example, nuclear is responsible for approximately half of all clean energy generation in Europe. And in the recent taxonomy, nuclear energy is kept in a great zone regarding its sustainability compliance. Here today, I would like to highlight there are no doubts within our global nuclear community that nuclear energy contributes a lot to economic prosperity, to sustainability, and to carbon neutrality. And the pandemic has only confirmed that nuclear power guarantees a stable supply of electricity with high safety and sanitary standards, together with securing many thousands of jobs. On the other hand, we cannot ignore current sustainable regulation development, and it is spreading from Europe through the continents and influences the mindset both of local communities and official authorities, and of course of banks and investors. And that's why I absolutely agree with my colleagues that our joint efforts should be about communication. We should aim to support discovering in details the incredible impact of nuclear energy on sustainable living. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paulina. I have to say, I think with your title, Chief Sustainability Officer, that could be, it probably is, one of, if not the most important jobs in any company these days. The whole role of ESG in our society and the role that nuclear can play in that is become super important. And I'm not sure we've told that story enough yet. And so we will continue to tell that story going forward. So Thank you, Paulina, for your comments. Next, I'd like to welcome Johannes Fennington and ask him to provide comments. Normally, Johan and I talk about ice hockey and whether Canada or Sweden has a better team, but today we'll talk nuclear, Johan.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks. Good to see you again here. And you know, hockey season starts soon here in Gothenburg. We hope to win the champions again, and also the Champion League in Europe. So let's see what that brings for us. Also, welcome all colleagues and friends here. I think this is a wonderful way of actually providing an opportunity to provide the message of nuclear, even though we are in these difficult times. And there are several new countries now that is building or considering nuclear power. And you could question that sometimes in the debate, why is that? But in my view, I think this is a search for securing your energy production to excel growth and competitiveness to fight climate change at the same time, that's just recently mentioned. Because the growth and stimulation of the economy, I think, is twofold. It's a direct stimulation from a large high-tech project, but also that nuclear will provide decades of stable fossil-free energy that will provide growth for the society. And we all know that the country's well-being or level of development is dependent on the energy supply. If we don't have energy, I mean, then we will not have a functioning society. And I think the high quality and reliability of energy at an affordable price, then you will reach a higher level of prosperity. And I think that's why we see the growth of nuclear all around the world now. But also the existing nuclear, I think we talk a lot about new nuclear, but we do have a large existing fleet and we need to protect that fleet because with lifetime extensions, we will continue to have a stable fossil-free energy supply that will provide the basis for the industries and society, not at least now in COVID-19 times. I think it's important to see that we need that basis in our existing society. So to be able to lifetime extend our plants could be important. And of course, nuclear, it is high tech, which provides some difficulties, but it also provides opportunities. Because if you have a high tech industry, that will drive job creation of high tech job creation. And it's also to continue to then develop the societies around the world. And of course, there's a high cost, it's a high upfront cost, and I think that's something we need to work with as a society. But also that will be an investment that will run there for 60, 80, or even more years. And it will also create a large number of jobs that we will see today, that in the discussions, that the job creation out of nuclear power is so large that it provides a lot of benefits in the society. I think we as an industry, we are good in talking to each other. I think we need to be more vocal. We need to be out in our societies, and we need to spread our word. I think in the EU, that is very evident that there's a lot of strong forces that are very vocal about anti-nuclear and want to stop the expansion of nuclear. Not at least now with the EU hydrogen strategy, we're talking about renewables and natural gas to be the founders to provide hydrogen, but when nuclear plays an important role. And I saw the announcement from France just recently how they will utilize the nuclear power to produce hydrogen. So I think we have a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges, and it's going to really be interesting to see the debate and discussion today.
Perfect. Thank you, Johan. And we'll be back to you shortly with a question about Sweden. And I mean, Sweden being one of the model countries for nuclear back a few decades ago, and what the chances are of maintaining the nuclear you have there and building on that. So we'll come back to that in a moment. We have with us as well Mr. Jay Weilman from GE Hitachi. I've known Jay for many, many years. We as well sit on the WNA board together and have traveled the world together at times. Jay, over to you for your opening comments, please.
Great, thank you, Tim. So hello from Wilmington, North Carolina on the east coast of the United States, where we have our global headquarters for GE Hitachi Nuclear. I want to thank Tim and Jette and the WNA for inviting me to this panel. Although we're doing it well, I think, on these virtual plateaus here, I really would rather have been up on the dais looking out over the audience of 400, 500, 600 people. But we will make do and continue to move forward. So our purpose at GE Hitachi is to build on our 60+ year legacy, boldly innovating to provide reliable carbon-free power to the world. So if you think about the topic of this panel around the environmental benefits and the socioeconomic benefits, the environmental benefits are very, very clear. For example, here in the US, thanks to the nuclear energy that we have here, we avoided over 476 million metric tons of carbon just last year. That's the equivalent to taking 100 million cars off the road. So think about that across the world in the more than 450 units that we have as an existing installed base, and the work that we have to do to continue to grow that with new nuclear. When it comes to the socioeconomic benefits, there's a clear jobs benefits, but it isn't just about those 400 or 500 people in today's installed base per plant. It really, if you think about it, it extends to the full supply chain, which is not only local, but international as well. And there are also the secondary jobs that are required to support that infrastructure as well. So the ability to bring in nuclear to community is really, really strong and helps socioeconomic benefits with a range of high tech to regular service industry as well. So all those great things about nuclear are fantastic. And we can tell that story, and we have been telling that story, and we need to continue to tell that story. But none of those benefits will be realized if we can't drive down the cost of nuclear. For me, and the direction we are going is to really bring those benefits of carbon-free nuclear, but making it cost competitive with all sources of generation, whether it be wind, combined cycle gas, or whatever. At GE Hitachi, we've got a rich history of innovating over several decades, and we're now positioned to bring a small modular reactor that meets the needs of the market. So we started to design our newest platform, the BWR X300, as a small modular reactor, and cost was the key. It was a design to cost exercise, built on the ESBWR design that's been NRC approved. So we have innovated to take cost out in areas like simplifications of systems, advanced concrete solutions, and construction techniques. And we are leveraging our proven supply chain and components and our NRC licensed fuel as well. We're targeting on deploying this by 2028 to be able to bring in that carbon-free energy, as well as creating jobs to deliver carbon-free energy, all while maintaining our historical levels of safety. So I really look forward to this panel discussion. Thank you, Tim.
Good. Thank you very much, Jay. And we're going to ask you a little bit more about SMRs in the question and answer period here in a few minutes. So thank you, everyone, for your opening comments. Obviously, lots of food for thought already. So we're going to turn to a question and answer session now with our panelists. I'm going to start with Johan, if I can, and I have some prepared questions for you. Johan, governments around the world are currently looking at plans to create high-quality jobs and revitalize their economies after the COVID pandemic. What would you say to them in terms of what a nuclear project would bring to a country's economy and overall well-being? And looking at the employment benefits deriving from the nuclear sector, do you think that the nuclear sector can be ready to create new jobs in the short term? Johan?
Yeah, I strongly believe that we see a global expansion, and that will be different in different regions as we have, which also the impacts on the economy will be different in the different regions. We all know that a nuclear power plant project, both building a new plant, but also refurbishing and upgrading the existing one, creates a lot of jobs. And I think it is a matter of political will if we want to do that, because I think if we see it are some of other areas, like I mentioned, the hydrogen area, where the EU is putting about 500 billion euros into that project, that is quite quickly creating a lot of jobs in that sense. And we see with the projects like Hinkley Point C, where the job creation is large, both in the local community and also in the nationwide, in the whole UK, how many jobs that are created. So I think if we get the right politics in place and the right willingness from politics to really support that, there could both be, of course, long-term effects with some of the plants, but also short-term, and also making the decision for new plants that is in the pipeline, but also working and really taking on the challenge of lifetime extension. Because lifetime extensions, I think we have done that here in Sweden. It's done in several places around the globe. And if you work with that, that creates a lot of highly skilled engineering work that later on also will create construction works. Also, if I look on the Swedish environment, we also have the waste side and the back-end side. We do have large projects that are quite ready to be decided, that needs to be approved. And that is large construction works for like deep repositories like we have in Sweden, it's in Finland, Canada, you are working on the same concepts. And that also creates a lot of jobs. So mostly maybe mid-term, long-term, but also on the short-term, there will be possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Thank you very much, Johan. I'm going to move to Polina with a question. Polina, in recent years, Rosatom has been very active in highlighting nuclear energy's role in helping to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Polina, what would you say are the key parameters to take into account when making the choice of a country's energy mix?
Yes, thank you, Tim. That's absolutely right. As we believe that Rosatom as a global company is responsible for its global impact. And that's why we do really commit to the sustainability agenda. And such a commitment is now affirmed in Rosatom's long-term strategy. Earlier this year, we have issued an analytical paper about how nuclear energy may support the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. As I have already mentioned, nuclear energy definitely helps to achieve the goal affordable and clean energy, as well as goal climate action. And there are also considerable effects on the goal decent work and economic growth through the job places, and the goal industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And here, answering your question, our customers are interested in all these macroeconomic effects, which matter more or less depending on the particular country specifics. Different countries have different background, of course, and so there is no one-size-fits solution. But I provide you with some examples. For our project in Hungary, we were asked to ensure at least 40% of local content. And for our Akkuyu project in Turkey, there is a requirement of a certain proportion of local employees. For all our customers, we provide personal education and training services. And so now we support almost 2,000 of foreign students from 58 countries who study in Russia on nuclear specialties. So there is no one solution, but we're trying to be in line with this sustainability agenda and sustainable development goals.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. I think that's a brilliant strategy to really integrate and implicate the countries in which you're working and that want your technology. So we applaud you on your efforts in that regard. We're going to turn to Mr. Liu again. Mr. Liu, we all watch nuclear matters in China very closely. Everybody watches what's going on in China, and you gave us some encouraging numbers already this morning. China's nuclear capacity has grown significantly over the last decade. However, the current expectation is that China will start construction on around 6 new nuclear projects each year. This suggests that China will maintain the rate of capacity additions rather than continue to accelerate deployment. What do you think the prospects are for nuclear energy to play an even greater role in meeting China's energy and environmental objectives?
We now in China, we believe the role of nuclear energy, both for energy supply and also for environment protection. So this role is consistently believed, not only by nuclear industry, but also by the government and also by most of the public. So during the past years, our pace, the rate of nuclear development is always keep the same. And I believe that 6 units or 8 units each year is good enough for Chinese nuclear industry. You know, we have to keep in Chinese philosophy, we have a kind of thought, means the balance. That means we have this demand for energy supply, for electricity, and for more jobs, but also we have to take the balance into consideration, such as if we have enough human resources for design, for construction, and also for regulation, we have to take into consideration about the manufacturing capabilities and also for uranium, fuel supply, and so on. So I guess we will not have a more ambitious program, but 6 to 8 units each year is a right rate for China, I guess. Tim, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. And let me be very, very clear. We're very happy with the 6 to 8 units per year in China. That's a great record, and we wish you very, very much success in accomplishing that, because you're leading the world in new construction, and the whole world is watching you, and we're watching you, and we're supporting you in the effort to build out new nuclear in China. So congratulations to you and all of the people involved. I'm going to move to Professor Chung, and we're going to talk a little bit about Korea. Professor Chung, could you tell us more about Korea's experience in using nuclear energy to produce electricity cost effectively and also to contribute to sustainable development? That's the first part. And then we would say, what would you say are the main social, economic, and environmental impacts of the decision to phase out nuclear power in Korea? Right. Could you talk about that for us, Professor?
Okay, thanks, Tim. 2 questions for me, right? As to the first question regarding cost-effective electricity generation and sustainable development by nuclear power, I would like to list some factors. Firstly, there have been presidential interest regarding the localization of nuclear power plant technology. Secondly, we had an urgent need for the electricity to develop our country since the 1960s. Thirdly, Korea is lacking natural resources, including renewable resources as well. We So we had to resort to the technology-oriented resources, which was nuclear power. Fourthly, in the process of localizing nuclear power plant technology, the nuclear industry led other industry, such as heavy industry and construction industry, and even the shipbuilding industry as well. Finally, one very important element is that we maintained human resources by constructing nuclear power plant one by one. Korea is a small country. China is a big country. That's why they construct 6, but we constructed just one by one. By doing that, we could maintain manpower in industry. So that means we can expect continuous manpower for every aspect of nuclear industry and continuous cash flow. As to the second very sad question regarding the impact of phase-out policy, so far the impact is limited to one, early retirement of Walsung CANDU reactor, and secondly, suspension of construction of Shinhanul 3 and 4, 2 nuclear power plants. The construction is suspended. So, but after the declaration from the president, but we could resume the construction of Shingori 5 and 6 after public poll. For the last 3 years, there were several very brave professors who fought against the presidential phase-out policies. They wrote numerous articles in the newspaper, and they offered public lectures. They appeared on TV talk programs, and now they are lecturing on YouTube. Through this effort, the mood is changing. People who used to have negative perception are starting to gain eyes for the benefits of nuclear power. But the cancellation of construction of Shinhanul 3 and 4 nuclear power plants led to the collapse of supply chain. Also, we are losing students majoring in nuclear engineering. Without nuclear power plant export, we cannot maintain our nuclear industry. So the impact of phase-out policy are summarized like this. We are suffering from a deficit of KEPCO electricity company. Secondly, we are observing collapse of supply chain. And we maximize the LNG import. And local economy is declining, especially near nuclear power plant construction area. And what is worse, we are losing money to buy renewables. And finally, I'm expecting a better president in 2 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chung. And we count you among one of those brave professors that stands up for nuclear power in Korea. And
Right.
If you keep your efforts up, you and your colleagues, we do believe the mood will change and people will recognize the immense benefits of nuclear power from many, many different perspectives. So keep up the good work, Professor. I'm going to move to Jay Weileman. Jay, we want to talk about renewables for a moment. So the question is, the introduction of renewables in the system can lead to disruptions, as we've seen during the pandemic in some countries. How do you, Jay, see nuclear and renewables working together?
So thanks, Tim. You know, the future of carbon-free energy is absolutely going to require that all different types of the energy sources have to work together, including renewables, solar, wind, and others, as well as nuclear, to really meet the demands of an area, a country, or whatever. I think it's important that how they work together results in a stable grid, reliable operation, and cost-optimized power prices as well. Nuclear has traditionally been seen as only a baseload operation. So it comes up, it runs 24/7, reliable, carbon-free power. That has been the mainstay of our message, and that's what we have been delivering. However, as you start to see the increase in penetration of renewables, you will need to acknowledge the ability for nuclear not to just be base load, but to load follow, something that is not typically thought of with a nuclear reactor. And that's driven, of course, by with high penetration and the intermittency of several of the renewables. That's just going to be a capability that we're going to have. So I think that looking forward, small modular reactors are excellently fit for that purpose, and the ability to follow the output of renewables and load follow on the grid. A great example in the United States here on the West Coast in California, there's an area of over 40% renewables penetration. As you know, they've decided to close down, have closed down and have decided to close down other nuclear plants there. And due to shortages recently, you can see those wholesale power prices occasionally spike to over $1,000 a megawatt hour. So not a lot of stability in the power prices. So we can do more than just the zero carbon, reliable, dispatchable power. Again, we need to do it at the right price. You'll hear price and cost out of me a lot in today's panel. But I think that's another attribute that is going to be very, very important to be able to add more nuclear and keep that grid solid and stable with the introduction of renewables as well. So in my mind, historically, we've been thinking of nuclear or renewables. It really has to be nuclear and renewables.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Appreciate those comments. And I think your theme of cost of nuclear, which you've raised both times, is one that we just have to take on. I know we don't like it very much because it's not always a good news story for us, but we have to take it on at some point and be in the ballpark on that. And so I'm going to come back to you, Jay, in a few minutes on SMRs. I've got some questions on SMRs because I think you're one of the leaders in that piece. So thanks, Jay. We're going to go around again if we can. I think we have time, and I'd like to go back to Johan if I could. And Johan, I know you never like to hear quotes that you made in the past come back at you, but I'm going to use one. Last year, you were quoted in an article saying, "We absolutely see that we can run nuclear power longer, 2045, 2065, or even new nuclear power." So, Johan, what are the prospects for life extensions and new nuclear in Sweden today, and what would these mean for things like jobs in that country?
No, this quote I can live with. I think that was quite a good one, so I have nothing against that one, but sometimes they come back and haunt you, but this one I really can stand behind. And I think you have to look at from the big picture, and I think that is important. What will happen in the future? I mean, we're looking at climate change and decarbonization of our total society. I think we have in different countries come quite far in decarbonizing in the energy sector. In Sweden, we are basically fully decarbonized with our hydro fleet, nuclear fleet, and renewables. But it's also going to take on industry and transportation. We have a huge task of electrification coming in front of us. In the studies made here in Sweden, we see that the total need for electricity most likely will go up with like 30–40%. That would be like 50–60 terawatt hours. Looking up to 2045, which is the planning horizon for the current Swedish fleet with a 6 years lifetime, that would mean that we first to 2045 we will phase out, if we close the nuclear units and also the renewables that are built, we're basically going to need about 150 terawatt hours being built up to 2045 to meet that need. So for me, but just for pure economics, but also for getting the projects done, lifetime extension must be an alternative after 2045. Because that is the cheapest and the best way of doing that. And if we look around the world, especially in the US, there is lifetime extensions going from 60 to 80 years. And with the current fleet of reactors we have, with the boiling water reactors, pressurized water reactors, this is absolutely doable as we see it right now. There's no decisions made. We just made our lifetime extension from 2025 to 2045. But I think this is really both technically, economically, but also needed from society. I think also the public opinion, we can see from coming a situation in Sweden with basically a decision to close down nuclear by 2010. We have removed that ban. We also have removed the ban on research and also of exporting reactors. And now we're in a situation where about 75 and 80% of the public is positive to nuclear. and about 40% is positive to build new nuclear. And I think that's a tremendous change that has been done. And just yesterday, there was a research study done by some Swedish scientists and scientists from MIT that's saying from the total system cost, we will need about a third nuclear, a third hydro, and a third renewables, because then you will get a balanced system. So I think all the conditions are there. We just, first of all, need to run our plants safely. Then we need to be able to do the lifetime extensions. And I think I'm quite sure that in the 2030s, we will also see new build in Sweden starting to come. I think it will be needed. And just like Jay said, the SMRs is a really promising technology. We need to get the politics in place. We need to get the market models that really gets reimbursement for system services in place. And also, as Jay said, we need, as an industry, to get the cost and construction lead times down, because we talk about the outside world a lot, that they should create conditions, but we have a lot of work to do inside. And all in this, I think both going to create jobs, but also save the jobs we have today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that sounds very encouraging in Sweden. I think Sweden has been, from day one, a leader in the development of nuclear power. You've gone through your different phases, mostly political, but are in a good spot now. And we're encouraged to hear that the future could see not only extensions, but even new nuclear in Sweden. And so that's encouraging. And we urge you to continue the fight for that as well. So thank you. We're going to go back to Dr. Chung. Dr. Chung, we were a bit hard on you in the first question, talking about a phase out of nuclear in Korea. We could also talk about the fact that Korea has recently successfully built 4 units in the United Arab Emirates, which is a really good story. Can you tell us, Dr. Chung, has this experience abroad helped with the retention of skills and helped maintain the Korean supply chain capability? And can you give us a peek into the future? Will there be more build-outs by Korean construction companies in the future?
Right. Actually, the Baraka nuclear power plants were our second nuclear export. Just before that, we export a research reactor to Jordan. This means Korea can export a research reactor as well as a commercial nuclear power plants. At first time, honestly, I didn't believe that we could build a Baraka nuclear power plant in time within budget, but we did. It was a morning call to Korean nuclear engineers that we can export APR 1400 more. It helped Korean industry economically. Also, it helped to accumulate know-how on foreign nuclear power plant construction, including transportation of components and equipment, and manpower and resources control as well. Actually, had it not been for the nuclear phase-out policy of the current president, it was time for us to export our nuclear power plant, because Korean domestic electricity demand has almost been saturated. So we hope we could export more nuclear power plant in future before we lose our economic competitiveness due to the collapsing of supply chain. Actually, I believe a nuclear phase-out policy of one country does not spring off by itself. There are worldwide structures to incite anti-nuclear sentiment. Thus, nuclear engineers worldwide should help one another to tackle them, because it is the way to save the world from climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm going to turn over to Jay again. And Jay, I said I'm going to ask you a question about SMRs, which, you know, I think the world is watching very closely the SMR space. I think here in Canada, we have probably 11 or 12 different models in front of our regulator that are trying to get through the licensing process. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I applaud all of those companies, but I just don't think we can support that many different models. So maybe it's a race to get the first one moving ahead. But I can tell you, once we do find some, there's big appetite, even here in our small province and our country. there's great anticipation for SMRs, and so hopefully we're not too many years away. And so, Jay, you know, the nuclear sector has always been in the front end, and your company has been in the front end of R&D and technology. Can you tell me what steps are being taken to make SMRs more real, more cost competitive? And in addition to that, when we're selling these things, what other applications besides electricity generation can SMRs provide? Jay?
Great, Tim. I really appreciate that question. So I stepped back and thought about this. Maybe let me frame it this way. What if you could build a small modular reactor, 300 megawatts, for $1 billion or less? Today's generation builds are very expensive, CapEx overnight cost, and it is really difficult for private companies to be able to support that on their balance sheet. Even state-owned entities have to take a look at that as well. So what if? What if you could build a nuclear plant where the possibility of a large break loca was eliminated? Imagine all the safety equipment that's in today's designs that wouldn't be required for safe operation of that plant. What if you could figure out how to take advantage of those and simplify a plant such that it requires 90% less safety-related concrete and 50% less concrete per megawatt? So I'm very proud to say that's what our engineers at GE Hitachi have been able to do in designing the BWRX 300. Again, taking the NRC-approved ES-BWR Gen 3 Plus and really simplifying, putting some unique attributes in there to be able to simplify and get to a situation where we can be cost competitive with all the other forms of energy generation. I would say that everybody knows the value of nuclear energy, carbon-free, 24/7 reliable, right? But it really also has to, again, have that cost competitiveness. We're not standalone. We are in an ecosystem of energy generation. So we've taken a lot of this work and we've simplified things, as I mentioned, the advanced concrete and construction techniques. And we're also moving back away from nuclear specific design and going to catalog items and leveraging a lot of the supply chain that we've got instead of having to stand up a new one, as well as using already existing and operating fuel designs as well that's used in over 70% of the BWRs around the world. So we're really excited about the BWRX 300 and we want to be out there and we're on a track to be able to bring that to the market by 2028. Another key item is, of course, getting it quickly to market, but also construction cycle time. And to your question about what else can SMR support, actually a lot, very flexible. Think about hydrogen production with the growing demand for steel manufacturing, transportation to power vehicles, and also helping to create the synthetic fuels. Desalination as well. It could be used in places where water is scarce to get a desalination solution. District heating. How can you be very cost competitive and environmentally friendly for district heating applications where those are needed? As well as industrial use. I think you've seen earlier this year, we announced we're in discussions with Synthos, a manufacturer in Poland, to look at using the X300 to meet the company's electricity needs. So I really am excited about moving from what if to really getting it done.
Thanks, Jay. That's super exciting, and we wish you and your company the best on bringing that forward. The world needs it. We really need it, and we're counting on you and your team and others to bring those SMRs forward. So thank you for that. I'm going to move back to Paulina and just ask Paulina. It's a question right in your area of expertise, Paulina, and it's a really important one for us. And it says, Paulina, given Rosatom's expertise and experience with large nuclear energy projects, both within Russia and globally, what lessons have been learned regarding the socioeconomic multiplier effects of these projects? And secondly, considering these effects, would you say more support for nuclear is needed in the taxonomy and the Green Deal regulation in Europe and more globally? Paulina?
Yeah, Tim, thank you. That's really, really great question. First, I would like to point out about what you're asking about, lessons learned. That's a nuclear power plant life cycle is more than 60 years of operation, and plus up to 10 years for the construction period. So that is a huge project itself. And that means that nuclear energy is about long-term effects. That is really a strategic choice for a country. The decision to develop nuclear energy will be reflected in price of electricity and stable electricity supply, in industrial development and thousands of jobs, and of course in air quality and quality of life in general. The same seems to be in the taxonomy and the Green Deal criteria, because they set a number of compliance criteria which will define the European Union strategy not for ages, but at least for the next decades. And among those criteria are, of course, climate impact, safety standards, and support for local economic and social prosperity. In this way, we believe that these taxonomy criteria and nuclear power plant effects have a lot in common. And in this way, we need to make our best efforts to provide the EU officials and their experts with arguments and practical cases to ensure nuclear energy deserves to be an important part of the future energy mix. So that's what I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Paulina. That's a great answer to that question. We have one last question, and then I'm just going to give warning to all of the participants that we're going to have time. We still have a few minutes. So I'm just going to ask you a question on our theme, the maximizing nuclear energy's socioeconomic and environmental benefits, whether you think we can achieve that, and you have about 1 minute to wrap up. So some closing comments. So I'm going to ask you that in a minute, but I have one more question for Mr. Liu, and it's similar to the question we just talked about with Paulina, and it has to do with China's construction. We heard about construction in China, 6 to 8 reactors per year, which we applaud and we support. But we also see China building reactors outside of the country now in export markets. And Mr. Liu, what emphasis would your company give to supporting national supply chains and developing local skills and employment when you're building reactors outside of China?
I have some words following James' remarks concerning the SMR. Just as James mentioned, that the cost of SMR is a big real challenge for us to build SMR. Now in China, we have one HTR, high temperature gas cooled reactor in construction, but the cost is too high for the market. And also by the end of this year, another SMR, ACP 100, will be put the first concrete by the end of this year. But also the cost is also a big challenge. So I have what we need is that for the safety regulator, the review, the SMR, mostly using the way to review the large-scale reaction. It's unfair. No matter for ACP 100, especially for HTR, it's completely different philosophy. But for the regulators, they still use the same way. So I'm not sure if our nuclear industry, the world nuclear industry, can do something to give some new thoughts for the regulators. So the different regulation brings different cost, and if we use a new way to review for HTR, the cost for our HTR reactor would be reduced about 1/3. So it's a big number. Come back to your question about the building outside China. Since we have big program in China, and we have consistent program for the coming years. So we believe we have a full capability. So we are winning, and we have the capability to help others who want to build new nuclear reactor. So that's our thoughts. Although our main focus will be inside China, but we are also ready, since we have a full supply chain from design to construction, from manufacturing to operation. So we are willing to provide our help to other partners. But according to our experiences, we will export our technology, but we will use local staff for the most of the job, to for we call it responsible of a good renowned company. We should contribute locally. We should help local people to improve their life, their education, their life quality. So even I can give you an example. Even in Pakistan, up to now, right now, we have more than 6,000 Pakistan help us to build their reactor. So that's a huge number. So we are sure we should help the local people to contribute to the local society. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. I think that's absolutely brilliant strategy and absolutely necessary strategy to really get the buy-in from the country that you're building these plants in. And so we just say well done in that regard, and we wish you well on the new projects that you have coming in front of you. So, well, thank you to all of our panelists. We do have a few minutes left, and as I said, I'd like to give each panelist one more shot, just a very brief comment, and you'll recall that our theme is maximizing nuclear energy's socioeconomic and environmental benefits, and we've talked about that extensively over the past hour. And I would just, I'm going to go around to the panelists and just maybe just talk about one or two things that we need to focus on as an industry to achieve that going forward. What is the biggest focus? We've heard SMRs, we've heard environment, we've heard cost, we've heard lots of factors, many things we have to work on, communicating with the public, all of those things. I'd just be interested from each of you what you think the number one or number two things we have to work on would be in that regard. So Paulina, can I start with you? And we just need a short, snappy answer on that, please.
Yes, Tim, thank you very much. And I just want to remind that today we mentioned that communication is the key to be more open and more transparent to people, to provide them more information about value of nuclear technologies and nuclear energy. And in this way, I'd like to thank the WNA for providing a really influential platform to discuss nuclear energy impact on the sustainable development issues. And as we come to London and we discuss all these issues year after year. And the transition to digital that was at first glance was quite controversial and even depressing a bit. But now I think this digital world has the upside of this pandemic. I mean, having all these discussions online and translated via YouTube, it really makes the conversation more open and more transparent, and hopefully will help to engage more people. I would like also to mention that WNA Symposium traditionally opens the fall season for our nuclear community. And this year is not exception despite all the pandemic restrictions. So less in 2 weeks, on September 22, Rosatom will be hosting an online side event in the framework of the upcoming International Atomic Energy Agency General Conference. And our discussion will focus on the benefits of nuclear for economic and energy supply stability. So I wish to continue today's discussion. And as a conclusion, I'd like to welcome all our today participants to join the side event on September 22 to keep our today conversation going. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Paulina. We will watch very closely for that, and we wish you the best with that conference. So thank you. Jay, can I go over to you for some concluding comments?
Sure. You know, innovation has always been a key part in nuclear technology. And we've been through, in the last 60, 70 years, you know, a steady growth. We've had disruptions here and there, but fundamentally continuously improving in technology and operations and that. You asked me though, you know, what are the one or two things? In addition to that, you know, great tradition of everything nuclear brings around reliability and the zero carbon. But my number one and number two, you know, number one, obviously, as you've heard me say, is cost. And number two, you wouldn't be surprised for me to say, is cost. Again, we have to earn our seat at the table with other forms of generation and figure out how to really move the electricity generation segment to zero carbon. Really, really critical, but we have to earn our way there. So that's our focus, and really, really excited to see how this industry continues to move forward.
Excellent, Jay. Thank you very much. Well said. Mr. Liu, can I turn to you now, please?
Yeah, just as my colleagues mentioned before, that the remaining factors affecting the development or the nuclear power promotion, many factors. But if you ask me to list one, I would mention that it is nuclear technology itself. If we can have a technology cheap enough, safe enough, we can defeat our other competitors. So we need innovation, we need revolution, and CNC is ready to do this. And I also think that the international cooperation is very important. So we are glad to have our international partners to help us to achieve our goal for cheaper and safer nuclear energy. And my last word is that I would like to use a sport company league slogan: just do it. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. We know that one. Yes, thank you. Professor Chung, could I ask you for concluding comments?
Right. My answer for the maximizing the benefit of nuclear power is simple: just deploying more nuclear power plants worldwide. In that sense, the nuclear phase-out policy of Moon's government of Korea deprives all our world of the opportunity to reduce the greenhouse gas effectively. I mentioned there are worldwide structures that incite anti-nuclear sentiment like Greenpeace. So I would count we need international collaboration to tackle them. Thank you very much.
Last word to you, Johan.
Yes, thank you, team. I start with one subject here, since I'm also governor in Warnow. I think one of the fundamentals is that we need to continuously operate safely our power plants, because if we are not operating them safely, that will have a huge impact on the whole nuclear fleet. So I think that will always be my number one, that we operate safely. But on the other hand, I think on the rest of the items, we do have all these piece parts as a nuclear industry. We provide CO2-free energy, we provide security of supply. We have, from a system perspective, a very low-cost production sources if you look at the total system cost. So I think for us, we have all the elements. We just have to become better of getting through into the politics and into the media and the communication. And I think we have become much better, a lot thanks to WNA and to Agneta and the work that has been done there now the last years. I think we are now putting a big step into the global organizations, but also the other technologies which are important, the fossil-free technologies, renewables, they're also becoming better, and we need to make sure that we treat it equally. So we just have to become better and open, transparent in working with politics and communication. And then, not as I said before, last, cost. I mean, we need to be able to deliver on time. We need to deliver at a low cost. We need to operate at a low cost. Because if we don't do that as an industry, we have to look to ourselves. Then we will not be competitive. And if you're not competitive, you will be out of the market. And then my final comment is also, I'm looking forward for Sweden to beat Canada in the next hockey game. So that's my final conclusion.
Yeah. Thank you, Johan. And let me conclude today by thanking all of our panelists for their very insightful and interesting comments. I feel very honored to have been part of this panel today. You know, I think the message is clear. We have an incredible opportunity in front of us as the nuclear industry, whether it be large-scale plants, small modular reactors, micro reactors. The world needs our technology. But you know, I think I've said this before at conferences, we can't just talk to ourselves about it. We need to go out into the world and explain to the world the multiple benefits of nuclear energy. We need to do that, because if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it for us. So I encourage all of you to get out and spread the word about nuclear power. I think it's our duty. So I just want to thank everyone again today for joining us on the broadcast. I have one further duty, which gives me great pleasure. I'm going to turn things over to a very good friend, former colleague of mine, Mr. Philippe Quenor. Philippe is the president and CEO of Orano, and Philippe is also now serving as the current chairman of the World Nuclear Association, and Philippe is going to give us some closing comments. So thank you all. Philippe?
Yes, thank you, Tim. Indeed, it has been 3 exciting panels over these days. Would have been better in London. We'll organize that for next year. And as you mentioned, Tim, we need to open ourselves and communicate with the outside world. This was particularly the case for the first panel on Wednesday. And with 2 highlights. Of course, I cannot sum up everything, but 2 highlights certainly. I would want to stress the International Energy Agency, because it's outside of our community, but they stress that the world will fail its climate targets if we don't rely on nuclear. And it's important because it has been a switch. We couldn't have said the same thing 3 years ago about the International Energy Agency. So they have been publishing papers. Please rely on them for your communication. They're on Twitter, on other social networks. That's really great news that a historically fossil-oriented agency is now also pro-nuclear with all low-carbon solutions, of course. The second highlight was, I would want to underline, was the presence of a climate minister of Poland, and he had just announced before the Polish program for 6 new reactors to be built before 2040. And that's great news, because at least for Europe, this is the country which relies the most on coal for electricity production. And Poland to switch from coal to nuclear shows all the benefits of nuclear, on which we came back on the 3rd panel. But before that, we had this second financial panel yesterday, where we got a clear message, which was talk less about technology. The projects are complex enough in terms of risks, of market design, of long-term financing needs, so that you don't get the bankers with technology too much. Talk the language of the bankers, especially on those aspects. We have now a world where ESG, responsible finance, takes more and more importance. Nuclear has a key card to play in Europe with a fight on taxonomy, but globally for each different project in different setups in different countries, we need to talk the language of the bankers, and they are here to listen, which is also new, also a shift over the last years. So there will be different funding models, different ways to take care of system costs. I was surprised recently to hear a very senior official of the European Commission discovering what a system cost is when you reach 30% or more of renewables on your grid. So this is our task, to make all this known to people who are not so familiar and are not so interested in technology, which are fascinating. And we're, of course, used to talk about it, but let's meet with the financial world was the key message of a second panel. Now, on today's panel, you were just more than 200 to follow it, so I will not repeat. And the conclusion was impressive because everybody agreed that we have all what is needed to bring to the world all the advantages of nuclear, but we need to get all of them right. Korea, with success on export, insisted on the importance of communication. We got wrong, and we had the impression that it's getting better. And thanks to the effort of WNA in particular and IETA's team, we have to get the safety first, of course, right? The costs. We bring jobs. We bring local supply chain. We bring innovation for SMRs, for example. All this we have, but for a given project, we need to bring them all at the right level, the right balance, the right place. And that will support a country like China building 6 to 8 reactors per year in the next period, but also around the world. We have all of this with a good communication, with a good market design and price for carbon, we can bring it. So all in all, I would say we follow the load, the nuclear with renewables. Nuclear's aptitude to load follow is key. And now we are following a wave that is indeed building up. So I would want to thank really all our panelists. It's been great. Was really also glad to learn that there was 75 support for nuclear in Sweden. So there is really a support building up for our industry. And these 3 days, even remotely, could show it. I want now maybe to come to our association, as we usually talk about it during our yearly, and I thank Tim and all of my predecessors for having chaired this organization. But specifically this year, I want to thank Agneta and her team for leading the organization for the pandemic. They have made a great job to make sure of two things. First, this great collaboration with OECD Nuclear Energy Agency, where it's another international agency where we could show the influence of nuclear and all its advantages. And 4 papers were issued, 4 policy briefs, and please report to the website also, where they are quite important and really useful for your communication. One is on cost-effective decarbonization of electricity system with nuclear. A second one is creating high-value jobs. We're addressing the subjects of the last panel with nuclear. Unlocking finance for nuclear infrastructure is the third one. And the fourth one, building low carbon and resilient infrastructure with nuclear. So that was one of this task during the pandemic. And the second one was more specific, to give material to you, to the members, to the governments, to show that nuclear is really important in the recovery plans, economic recovery plans that are starting, although the pandemic is not finished. And in these plans, going to low carbon for nuclear, we talked hydrogen today, is a key asset that can bring job, can bring education, as our colleague from Rosatom showed, by having 2,000 students from around the world trained on nuclear. So nuclear has a key role. And here WNA was pretty present to ensure that together as an industry from around the world, we are listened to on these post-pandemic challenges. And indeed, we have both more than 108 projects, reactors that are waiting for approval, but projects that are already mature, that we need to push. We also have nearly 300 reactors that are more than 30 years old and that can still bring safely, if so approved, if so assessed, electricity for the next decades at a low carbon and competitive price. This push, WNA is really without any problem pushing it to all the governments. And I would really appreciate, I'm proud, basically, to say, I'm really proud of this organization and the room it is filling in the world to talk to IAEA. We also had United Nations Sustainable Development Director here on the first panel. So really WNA is pushing this in international organizations and to government. It's really a good success so far over these last years. And this is for my last word for Agneta. Agneta has decided to change and go to other project, personal project, and to leave the organization. She has been a tremendous CEO for 8 years, leading the uphill battle after Fukushima. We see now the results by the examples I just gave, by her drive, by her energy, our straight approach to things, her communication skills, her interpersonal skills. I would want to really personally thank Agneta for all the job and all the results, not only the means, but also the results which were achieved by WNA over these last years. Thank you, Agneta. In fact, the last time we met physically, it was to choose the way your successor would come on October 1st. Now it has been slightly delayed. You have not allowed me to announce, so there will be suspense over the next days, over the weekend. The successor has been chosen. I don't precise neither the origin, the name, but it will be a tough challenge to be your successor. I'm sure you will not be so far and help the new chairman and the new CEO to drive WNA to new successes. For example, we'll have a COP26 in Glasgow next year. I'm looking forward also to that after our seminar. Thank you very much to all. And with this, I wish you a happy nuclear year before meeting again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining the Strategic eForum 2020. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Centrus, Kazatomprom, KHMP, Nuclear 21, Rosatom, and Urenco. To access video recordings of the 3 panels, please go to worldnuclearforum.com, where you'll also find interviews with other industry leaders. Thank you to all our panelists over these 3 days, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.